Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully everybody can all hear me okay. If I could just get a couple of comments down in the live chat below before I get things started, just to let me know if everything is all good and solid. Also, how is everybody doing as well? Just before I get things started with the intro, we've got a little under 4 minutes now until the start of FP2. Good and solid. I'm getting some nice messages in the chat. Perfect stuff. Well, my name is Alex from the channel Alex Does F1 Stuff, and I'll be your commentator for the remainder of this FP2 session before the start of the sprint race, the first sprint race of 2022. If you haven't done so already, please do hit the like on this stream, as it really helps us out here at Racing Statistics, and also subscribe to the channel as well so you don't miss any more of these watch-alongs. If you've got any questions that you'd like to pop to me in the chat, then please do let me know and I'll try my best to answer them. I'll also be commentating on the action that happens whenever it gets underway in just over 3 minutes time. I'm currently watching the Sky stream on my Now TV player at the moment, so it might be a little bit delayed from what's actually live. So just bear with me if anything does end up happening. It takes me a little while to actually get up to speed to watching it. But how is everybody thinking? And what's everybody thinking regarding this FP2 session, especially before the sprint race, as it's sort of a little bit pointless, this FP2 session really, is we had the qualifying yesterday, the sort of manic, hectic qualifying yesterday with the rainy conditions. It's certainly dry today with an extremely low chance of rain. It's about 50% humidity, around 19 degrees current track temperature at the moment. And we are still waiting for the session to get started. But what are we expecting to see from this FP2 session then? Lots of hello messages. Hello, 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 everybody. Also, where is everyone watching from? Because it's currently 11:30 in the morning for myself here in the UK. It's a little bit cloudy at the moment outside. But looking at all the Ferrari flags waving here in Imola, it looks similar weather standards to what I've got here. It's a little bit of blue skies, but a little bit of cloud, but definitely dry. Definitely dry. When is the Sprint Grand Prix? Well, the Sprint Grand Prix is at 4 o'clock. I think 4 o'clock UK time. That is track time. I'm not 100% sure, but it'll be around 2 or maybe 3 hours later after this FP2 session. Now, the sprint is ever so slightly different to what it was last year. It's mainly the technicality terms have changed a little bit. So who gets awarded the official pole position? That actually went to the person who was fastest yesterday, as opposed to the person who wins the sprint race today. And then they've decided to award a couple of more points as well. So it is 8 points for first place in the sprint, then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, all the way down to P8. So there's a couple more points on offer for the Sprint Grand Prix, and it's about a third distance. I think it's going to be around 21 laps in total for the sprint later this afternoon. And this session here is basically aiming to set the cars up for the sprint race. Although the cars are near enough locked in already, they can't really do too much as they're already in their parc fermé conditions. So there's not really too much they can change, but it's mainly just dialing into a now dry track. We've had extremely limited running in the dry at this circuit. And when it has been dry, it's been sort of damp and cold. So this is going to be really interesting to see the true pecking order when it is actually dry. All right, let's have a look at some of the questions, as currently we've got around 15 seconds until the green flag comes out. And then we actually get some people going out on track. I'll also pull up some more information for myself so I can make my commentating duties a bit easier as I join the live session here. So I can have a look at some sector times and some temperatures and things. I'm not even logged in. See, I'm not prepared. I am not prepared this morning. As I believe we have a green flag. It is green flag conditions and cars are heading out on track. I don't think they're going to be heading out super quick. I don't think people are going to be all that keen, as we've got one car heading down the pit lane currently. I can't work. Oh, it's Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin is the first out, first to leave the pit lane. What do we think about Aston Martin? What do we expect from them? Because they've had a struggle bus of a season. They have had a struggle bus of a season so far. So what do we expect to see from Aston? Are we going to see them a little bit further up the leaderboards in this FP2 session? Who knows? Oh, hello, Supermax and the Minister of Defence. Hello, hello, hello. What is going on currently? A nice chill morning and just enjoying some of the FP2 F1 action that we've got. I do hope you enjoyed your time at Australia's Albert Park circuit 2 weeks ago. It sounded so cool to be there. Sounded very, very cool. People expecting Stroll to be on pole. That would be incredible. Honestly, if he could get another pole position in the Aston Martin to have another Stroll pole, that would be really quite cool. But it's a bit of a stretch, as we're currently looking at Carlos Sainz at the moment. He's sat in the garage, not actually in his car at the moment, but it's a bit of an interesting session so far for Carlos Sainz, isn't it? He's had a funny start to the season, has Carlos Sainz. He really has. All right, let's see if I can just log in to this. I cannot. I got my password wrong. Good job. There we go. And now I can get this information up here. I already have that. Do I not? There we go. That's what I was after. There we go. Sorted. Oh, we've got a couple more cars out on track at the moment. We've got the Mercedes. Mercedes are out there on track at the moment. So we've currently got 8 cars. We've got Stroll, Schumacher, Zhou, Russell, Vettel, Hamilton, Alonso, and Magnussen, as Schumacher has just come back into the pits. 7 cars out on track at the moment. With the 2 Mercedes out there, what are they going to do? The first time that a Mercedes car was not in Q3 in our standard Q1, 2, and 3 qualifying format since 2012, since Japan 2012, over 10 years. That's actually incredible. I wonder what Aston Martin did to fix their issues on their car. In what way fix? In what way fix? I don't know if they've actually fixed any of the issues. They seem to be as lost as Mercedes, unfortunately. Yeah, they seem to be lost. There are definitely teams that seem more lost than others, like Mercedes at the moment. They are just, they don't understand the concept of their car. They don't understand the philosophy of it, or how to maximize their performance. Their car is bouncing very similarly to the Ferrari, but the Mercedes bounces continuing into the corner, which is why it's so unstable, and the drivers aren't happy with it because they can't predict what's going to happen with the car. They're not confident into the corners. Whereas if you watch the onboards of the Ferraris, it will happily bounce down the straights in the same way that the Mercedes does. But the moment the Ferrari starts slowing down and hits the brake pedal, it's nice and firm, super planted, and it just flies through the corners. And that is currently what Mercedes are missing. Take a look through some of these comments that we've got. Supermax and the Minister of Defence, you had a great weekend. You got to meet Checo and Max. Oh, that's incredible. Oh, that is so cool. That is really, really awesome. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. People talking about Fernando Alonso. What's he going to be able to do? Where is, actually, I need to pull up the starting grid for the sprint, because this FP2 session is somewhat pointless for things. I'm interested to know what the actual starting grid is. I know it's Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Magnussen was up there, and I can't remember who's in P5. P5, it might just have been Alonso. It was actually Fernando Alonso. So actually, Alonso could do some bits. He could do some nice moves in the sprints. We know he really likes starting. He starts really, really well, does Fernando Alonso. So he could potentially actually make up a couple of places in the sprint race and actually potentially start second row, maybe even on the front row if there's some issues between, I've forgotten the 2 drivers who are at the top of the sport. Leclerc and Verstappen. That oh dear. I completely forgot Leclerc and Verstappen's names. Completely forgot them, as we've got some Hamilton team radio and a big drop in power. A complaint about a big drop in power from Lewis Hamilton, as we've just had a donation of 1,000 yen I think that's the symbol for yen. I'm not sure. You might have to correct me if I'm wrong about that. Hello from Japan. Thank you for your great stream as always. I thank you very much for the kind donation there. Really, really appreciate that and glad you are enjoying the stream. We'll be continuing all of these watch-alongs throughout the 2022 season, so feel free to tune in and ask any questions whenever you like. Thank you very much. As currently we're looking at Carlos Sainz, still sat in the garage in the first 5 minutes. Hopefully he can have a bit of a better session and show that he's got some pace, as I think he's got some pace, Carlos Sainz. It's just he seems to be a bit, I don't know. I don't know whether he's too focused, whether he's not focused enough. I'm not sure. He definitely seems to be making an awful lot of mistakes this year as opposed to last year. Whereas he actually outperformed Leclerc last year, and this year it's completely flipped on its head. He is being trounced by Leclerc this year. As we're currently on board with Sebastian Vettel in his Aston Martin on the soft compound of tyre, the C4. So Pirelli have brought the middle range of compounds C2, 3, and 4 to this Imola circuit. But we only have 2 lap times on the board at the moment. Make that 3 lap times on the board at the moment. Lewis Hamilton at 1:21.8, Lando Norris 1.9 seconds back, and then Guan Yu Zhao 2 seconds back from that. Medium, soft, and medium for the 3 drivers that have set a lap time. We do currently have Sebastian Vettel going round. 1:21's a wee bit slow from what we saw in the first part of qualifying, like the dry parts of qualifying yesterday. We saw times dip into the 1 minute 18s. So definitely times in the 1 minute 21s. I'm expecting those to speed up just a wee bit towards the end of the session. Let's head back to live timing so I can see a couple of sector times. We've got Sergio Perez going quickly at the moment. Purple sector 1, purple sector 2, quite significantly actually in both. But Verstappen sets a fastest purple sector 1, or sector 2, sorry, as Perez goes P1. A 1 minute 20.447 for Sergio Perez there. Let's have a look at some of these comments. Oh, so it was yen. It was the Japanese yen currency. Okay, I thought I was right with that. Any other comments that we've got? PU problem for Mercedes or Lewis? So that was a little bit of radio that we just heard, that he had a noticeable drop in power. So that could be what's called clipping. So these power units, when they regen, as they're coming into the corners, where the lights flash on the back of the car, that's when they're going into energy recovery mode. And essentially it stops deploying power to the engine, and it's like you start to slam on the brakes. The drivers notice a massive drop off in power. And normally for a qualifying run, you would like there to be no clipping. You would like it to start regenning whilst you're braking, not as you're accelerating towards the corner. So that could be the issue that Hamilton is facing, or there's no power on the exit, in which case it will just be a map setting on the steering wheel that he can change, an engine mapping issue potentially. Let's see, let's have a look at some other comments. As we've got pretty much everybody is out on track at the moment. The only people that aren't or the only people that haven't set a lap time actually is Ricciardo, Latifi, Ocon, Sainz, and Bottas. People are all on a lap time other than those 5. Interesting that Sainz and Ocon are both still in the pits, as Ocon had very limited running over this weekend so far. So yeah, very limited running for Esteban Ocon at the moment. So I'm surprised he's still one of the drivers that's still in the garage. What has happened to Carlos? Well, nothing as of yet. He's still currently in the garage at the minute. I was just briefly discussing a little bit earlier that he's having a bit of a torrid start to his 2022 campaign after the highs of 2021, actually outperforming Leclerc in his first season with the team. And now he's suddenly sort of dropped off just a wee bit, making a couple of mistakes here and there in the first opening rounds. So hopefully he can sort of put that behind him and set some solid lap times here in FP2 and make up some ground from P10 in the sprint race. As we're currently looking at Daniel Ricciardo's car, but it's in bits, and Ricciardo is nowhere near getting in the car. He's got his headphones on, race suit is halfway off, and it doesn't look like Ricciardo's getting in the car anytime soon. As I'm just listening to Ted on the commentary. 1 second. Oh, oh, oh dear. Okay, so big problems for Daniel Ricciardo. The engine and the gearbox are out of the car, and it's all in bits. So there is a big problem for Daniel Ricciardo, and it doesn't look like he's going to get out at all in this FP2 session. That is according to Ted Kravitz just now on the Sky stream at the moment. As we've got Perez setting the fastest purple time, a 1 minute 19.878, half a second quicker than Max Verstappen. Both drivers on the softs, and then we've got Yuki Tsunoda 1.1 back on the mediums at the moment as well. A little bit surprised at the drop off in pace for the AlphaTauris though. Seeing them drop off as much as they did. I think weren't they both out in Q1, or at least one of them was out in Q1? Both of them were out in Q1, 16th and 17th for the two AlphaTauris. I was very surprised to see that. So hopefully in their dry running performance at their home circuit, that's literally, I think, 8 kilometers or 10 kilometers away from their Faenza base, hopefully they can put in a decent performance here. A couple of points about the Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren here in the chat. So Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren is in the garage in bits. It looks like the engine and the gearbox assembly is all out of the car. The front end was off of the car. Ricciardo looked like he was nowhere near getting into it whatsoever. And Ted Kravitz didn't really know too much about what was going on or why this was happening. But yes, it doesn't look like Ricciardo's car is in a fit state to get going in this FP2 session. Daniel has not crashed. No one has as of yet crashed in the first 13 minutes of this session. As we've got Carlos Sainz out on track. He is out on track. Hopefully he doesn't make any more mistakes, but there's quite a few cars out there at the moment. It's a bit of a traffic paradise right now, as we've got Lando Norris, Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Kevin Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, as we've just spoken about, Esteban Ocon and Valtteri Bottas are all in the pits. I might have to check Twitter quick to see if there's any official word from anybody regarding Valtteri Bottas looks much the same way at the moment as Daniel Ricciardo. The mechanics working on the engine and the gearbox is still off of the car. This is for Valtteri Bottas in a very similar manner to Daniel Ricciardo. So it's potentially both of those drivers may not be able to get out in this FP2 session at the moment. Yeah, hopefully Carlos doesn't have an incident in this FP2 session. Hopefully it's just a nice, clean session, but I think he's just done an installation lap and come back. Yeah, he's just done an installation lap, come back into the pits for the time being for Carlos Sainz. I would like him to have a clean weekend, but those have seemed a bit few and far between at the moment. As we're on board with Lewis Hamilton, as that Mercedes bounces and bounces up and down, and he cuts the corner. Which corner is that? I don't know. One of the 19 turns at Imola, one of the chicanes. Hamilton cut that quite nicely. Again, that's probably to do with the issue of the car being so unstable on corner entry that it just bounces up and down and still bounces through the corner. So they have no confidence on turn-in, no commitment, no nothing through the turn-in and the exit, that they don't know what the car is going to do. As we've got Albon up in P3, Alex Albon in the Williams, that if you've seen has shed pretty much all of its paintwork. As if you think F1 cars now, they're large, they are big things, and there's lots of finicky, tiny little bits on these Formula One cars. So the surface area of an F1 car is going to be ridiculous. So if you think you're going to go through what, 3, 4, maybe even 5 liters of paint, like the spray paint to paint this thing. So you've got the undercoat, the first coat that sticks to the carbon, then that is what gets sprayed on with the normal colors to attach on nicely. You're looking at like 4 to 5 kilos worth of paint, as it's roughly a liter is a kilo, roughly. So that's like heavy heavy amounts in just the paintwork. So you can see why Williams have stripped a lot of that back and have gone bare carbon that's hopefully nice and smooth, because carbon isn't the world's most smoothest of things once it comes out of its oven. As we're still looking at Daniel Ricciardo at the moment, but it is interesting to see that lots of teams are doing a lot of paint stripping, that they're taking a lot of the paint off to try and come down and meet the weight requirement, as all of these cars are so significantly overweight at the moment, apart from like the Alfa Romeo, and I think there was another one that was close to it, but not too. Most of them are quite significantly over, like the Mercedes, Ferrari, and the Red Bull is quite far over at the moment. Are most teams running on race trim? Good question. I would like to think that most teams will, because there is no need to set any qualifying simulations anymore. So because we had qualifying yesterday, so today there is no need to do any qualifying simulation. So it's all going to be setting up for the race. So expect an awful lot of long runs at the moment. If I go back to this, I can see lap chart. Nope, not that one. This one here. So we've got some of the stint history at the moment. Lots of people are on 7 and 8 laps for the stints, as they just want to try and get a feel for the dry circuit. They want to get a feel for this dry circuit, as we haven't really had much dry running at all, really, for the time being. Funny how Mercedes is overweight, even though they don't have side pods. This is very true, but because they don't have side pods, that's, yes, less carbon, but we don't know their type of intercooler. So, and all of the innards of the Mercedes. So it could be a fact that the car is nice and narrow, but they've had to come up with this new cooling technology or new something design that unfortunately is potentially heavy. And equally, Mercedes tend to run longer wheelbase cars than everybody else. So the car is physically bigger. There is just more of it. So that is potentially why Mercedes are a wee bit overweight at the moment. Am I commentating for the sprint race, or is that Ryan? I won't be commentating for the sprint race, but I'm not 100% sure if Ryan will be here. Hopefully Racing Statistics will be able to pop a little comment in there for you just to answer that question, but I don't think it will be myself. Looking forward to the sprint, or looking good for the sprint. Who is looking good for the sprint? Is that a question? We shall answer that with probably Red Bull. At the moment, as they are the only ones to really set a quick representative lap time, saying that Hamilton has just gone P2, 2/10 off of Sergio Perez on the softs as well. We haven't really seen too much pace from the Ferraris, but we do have Leclerc just pounding round on the medium tyre for the time being, doing quite a lot of long runs for Charles Leclerc. Will it rain today? No. No. It doesn't look like it, because it's going to rain today at all, unfortunately. Sonoda, lots of people talking about Sonoda. Sonoda is currently P4 at the moment on the medium tyre. Interestingly, his fastest lap has come from just 7/10 off of Sergio Perez. So he set a 1 minute 20.5, has Yuki Tsunoda at the minute. Hello, do you think Perez could win the race? Win the sprint race? Potentially. Win the overall race? Win the overall race? Personally, no. Personally, no. He'd have to have a really good start in the sprint and make up a couple of positions from P7, where he's starting the sprint. But a lot would have to happen at the front, because if he starts P7 for the Grand Prix, he's got a whole bunch of riffraff between him and Verstappen and Leclerc, who are just going to bolt, and then he's going to have to go onto a different contra strategy to try and overcome that. So it will be difficult. But if Verstappen and Leclerc come together, then Perez is the fastest car by a long way. He'll just be behind a bunch of slow riffraff that he'll be able to overtake. So if Verstappen and Leclerc come together, then yes, Perez is very, very capable of winning this Grand Prix, as we have just ticked over 20 minutes of this FP2 session. Hello and welcome to all that are new to this watch along. My name is Alex from the channel Alex Does F1 Stuff, and I'll be your commentator for the remainder of this FP2 session. If you haven't done so already, please hit like on this live stream. It really helps us out here at Racing Statistics, as well as hitting the subscribe button as well, so you don't miss out on any of these watch alongs. If you've got any questions, please do let me know in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer those, as well as commentating on the action that is happening at the moment. It's been a fairly subdued session, a very actionless session for the time being, as we've got Sergio Perez leading the way at 1 minute 19.8 on the softs. Hamilton 2 tenths down on that, also on the softs at the moment. Then Max Verstappen 7 tenths off, also on the softs. Then Yuki Tsunoda, Alex Albon, then Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, and now Sebastian Vettel are your top 10. We do have a couple of cars that are in the pits. Still, we've got Guan Yu Zhao, Lando Norris in the McLaren, who's down in P18. And then, unfortunately, Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas haven't yet set a time, but their cars are both in pieces. Their gearboxes are out, their engines are out, the front nose of the car is off, and all sorts. A lot of heavy work is being done to both Valtteri Bottas and Daniel Ricciardo. So it is unlikely that we will see them come out in this FP2 session. What has happened to Ferrari? Not much. Ferrari seem to be doing a couple of long runs, especially with Leclerc. He's doing an awful lot of long stints on the medium tyres. Carlos Sainz has done a bit of soft tyre running at the moment, so I imagine a lot of these teams are just gathering some race data, a lot of race data, because this session, it's kind of pointless to go quickly in this session, because we don't have a fast qualifying coming up. We have essentially a mini race and then the full race coming up after this. So this session is going to be solely race pace data gathering as opposed to fast lap data gathering. So do not fret if the two Ferraris are really, really slow. It is not going to be representative of their fast pace. They are on the medium tyre, really high on fuel, because Leclerc has done 13 laps and 12 on his current stint at the moment. So he's doing some long runs as opposed to the two Red Bulls, who are a little bit lower on the stint laps, and they've only run the softs at the moment. So there is a tyre discrepancy between Red Bull and Ferrari, and then also a run plan discrepancy. So hopefully that answers the question of why is Leclerc slow. There are lots of differences at the moment, completely different run plans for the time being, as that McLaren is being taken to pieces by Red Bull. McLaren. The McLaren is being taken to pieces by the mechanics. That was all wrong. Apologies, that was all completely wrong, that sentence. Mercedes, where are they? Russell has just gone P2. Russell has just gone P2 in the Mercedes. Hamilton P3. They are running the soft tyre at the moment, but Mercedes have done 4 stints overall, as opposed to like 2 and 3 for a lot of other teams. So they have put on an awful lot of tyres, and they've done an awful lot of short stints. So again, this isn't a lot of race running from Mercedes. This is more little bit quick pace. So potentially could be good news for Mercedes, but I'm not holding out too much hopes. Not holding out too much hopes personally. Have Mercedes brought any updates to FP2? To this session in particular, I don't think so. But to Imola itself, yes. There is a slightly new rear floor, rear area of the floor. There are some fins on the side of the car directing the air into the lower portion of the side pod. So yeah, there are some updates to the Mercedes, as well as a slight change to the rear wing as well, that isn't just a race specific rear wing. Like when we go to Monza, Baku and Saudi, we chop off a lot of downforce from the rear wing. That they're what's called race specific updates. There is a little bit of a package, but it doesn't seem to have worked too much, especially when it was the rainy conditions yesterday. Hamilton is racing like a noob this season. You think he's racing like a noob? I wouldn't say so. I would just say it's the car being undesirable to drive. I think I'll say undesirable. as every car is bouncing, every car bounces. It's just the Mercedes and probably the Aston Martin as well, and a couple other teams bounce into the corners and still go round the corners bouncing. And this is the main problem that especially Mercedes have, is the drivers have no commitment with the car. They've got no trust or confidence or faith in the car that they're going to be able to turn in confidently and exit the corner confidently. This is why when you watch them, they've got a bit of understeer going into the corners, and then they've got oversteer coming out of the corners. It's difficult for them to know what's going to happen into corners. Whereas if you watch the Ferrari, it will bounce down the straights, but then on the entry to the corners, it is planted, and they do have the commitment to steer into the corners. A couple of questions regarding the sprint format at the moment. So this is the practice session before the sprint that will be happening later this afternoon. I'm not 100% sure on the time, so I'm sure a couple of people will pop them in the chat there. So the sprint has changed a wee bit from last year. So last year we had points awarded from first, second, and third, 3, 2, 1. We now get points from first down to eighth, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The sprint is still the same length. It's still around 30%. It's going to be 21 laps for this Imola Grand Prix. And then it is setting the grid for the Grand Prix on Sunday. However, what has also changed is the official title of pole position has gone to the fastest driver yesterday, not for the winner of the sprint today. For people asking when the sprint is, I can just quickly find out. If I go to schedule, Italy, and the sprint race is at 16:30. That is track time, 16:30 track time. My time in the UK, that is, are we summertime at the minute, or are we GMT? I can't remember what we are at the minute. That's 3:30 UK time or 4:30 Italian track time. So what is the sprint winner called? That's actually a good question. I think it will just be sprint winner, exactly like that. So very similar to how last year they called the winner of the qualifying on Friday the Pirelli Speed King or something like that. It was something along those lines. They'll just come up with a new title for it. That's all that will happen. Oh, as we've got the helmet cam. The helmet cam has made a return with Esteban Ocon. I do like the helmet cam. I do like it quite a lot. As we've got a little over half an hour left of this practice 2 session. Albon, what tyre is Albon on? Albon has set his fastest lap in P6, 8/10 off of Sergio Perez on the soft compound of tyre. On the soft compound. As Russell goes P1. Russell goes P1. Interesting. That has taken me by surprise quite a bit. I was not expecting that. Now, Russell is on the soft compound of tyre. A 19.4 isn't the fastest lap time that we've seen so far. We have seen lap times in the dry in the 18s, but definitely to go P1 by 0.3 of a second is going to be a nice little confidence boost there. It's going to be a nice little confidence boost. Apparently, others weren't using the DRS. Oh, interesting. Again, it's a lot of race simulations that they'll be doing. So usually when they do race sims, they won't run the DRS because you don't really have it all that often in the race. But that's an interesting comment to note. I will have to look at some telemetry data to see about top speeds in the DRS sections there. Oh, Ryan has actually popped in a comment here. Anything noteworthy so far? No, no, not really. Not really at all. It's been quite a boring session at the moment for this half an hour. Lots of drivers just doing quite a lot of laps. Ricciardo and Bottas, they've got their cars in pieces. No engines or no gearboxes. There's an awful lot of work going on for both the McLaren and the Alfa Romeo. So I highly doubt they're going to set a lap time. We've got a lot of people out on the softs and the mediums, but doing quite a lot of significant runs or like run lengths for the time being. We've got Lando Norris actually literally just complaining about a long brake pedal. So his brake pedal's going long. that must be a horrible feeling as a driver, complaining out a brake pedal. That's the one pedal you want to have trust in. And if you don't have trust in it, you're not going to have a great deal of confidence. What in the Mercedes is going on? That's a good question. That's a solid question. I don't know. I was not expecting to see Russell topping the timing sheets. But bear in mind, he's done 6 stints. He has used 6 different tires at the moment. He's changed tires 6 times compared to Perez, who's done 2 stints, Verstappen, who's done 4, Tsunoda's done 4. So Mercedes have done 5 and 6 stints respectively for Hamilton and Russell. Like they are doing a lot of short stints as opposed to a lot of longer stints like the Ferraris are doing, because Leclerc is still pounding around on the same set of mediums. He's done 17 laps on one set of mediums, just happily setting in consistent lap times at the minute. So completely different run plans, Exactly like Jeremy has just said, Ferrari is chilling and not sending it because there's no need to send it. They have no need to set up the car to do a quick single lap pace because we've got no more like fast laps to come with it. There is no fast qualifying session to set the car up for one quick lap. Any other questions that we've got? Because we're currently looking at we're actually looking at 2 screens at the moment. We're looking at the broken car of now Lando Norris, car number 4, as they're looking at the brake pedal issue for Lando Norris. His car is in pieces, much like Daniel Ricciardo, as Norris is also off the pace. He's down in 18th at the minute. But again, this practice 2 session, it plays no significant role for the weekend. It's just a data gathering session. Like the stuff that happens here isn't really going to be too representative or too telling of what's going to be coming up in the session. So it's an interesting session, this FP2 one here. What is up with the McLarens? So Daniel Ricciardo has a engine/gearbox issue. The car is in pieces and they're currently working on rebuilding it. So I don't think they're going to get out too much in this FP2 session. And then Lando Norris has just briefly complained about a issue with his brake pedal, that it's going long, that there's something wrong with it going into the final set of corners, the final sector of this circuit. So there's some problems with the McLaren, some technical problems and mechanical issues with the McLarens for the time being. So hopefully they can get it fixed in the 3-ish hours that they've got between the end of this session, which finishes in just under half an hour's time, and the start of the sprint, which happens at 16:30 Italian track time. Do you think K-Mag can get a podium? Honestly, absolutely. I genuinely do think that K-Mag could get a podium because he's starting. If I head back to the I've completely forgotten it. My mind has just gone blank. If I go back to yesterday's qualifying session, he's starting P4. He's starting P4 for the sprint, which is insane. If he can just keep P4 in the sprint or even move forwards, a podium is easily on the cards. We know that one of the cars in front of him is extremely fragile in the Red Bull. So if that breaks, that's a free position. We know that Leclerc and Verstappen like battling hard, that we've seen in Saudi and in Bahrain. They're on the front row together. If they come together and touch, that's 2 free positions for Kevin Magnussen. I feel like a podium is massively on the cards for this Haas team. And it's got to be, it must have been spoken about, surely. Surely it has to have been spoken about at Haas, that this is one of their best chances that they've had ever to achieve a podium. As we're currently on board with Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. It must be so uncomfortable. Yeah, it must be really uncomfortable, that car. Like, it's just any car to bounce up and down. It must be so uncomfortable. So yes, Mercedes is currently P1 and in P3, but they have done an enormous amount of laps or short stints. Sorry, they've done an enormous amount of stints on various different tyre compounds for both drivers. 5 different stints for Lewis Hamilton and 6, which is the most of anybody for George Russell. Lots of short mini stints for Mercedes, so probably low fuel, I can imagine, and they've run mostly on the soft compound of tyre, unlike the Ferrari, especially of Charles Leclerc, who's just pounding around he's currently in the pits, but he has been pounding around on the mediums, doing 17 laps on one set of mediums at the minute. So they're just getting an awful lot of race runs for the Ferraris. How long till the sprint race? The sprint race will be 3 hours after the end of this P2 session. It will be starting at 16:30 track time, local track time, 16:30. That is the start of the sprint race, and it's around 21 laps, the sprint race for this weekend. So it'll be around half an hour or so, the sprint race. Yes, 3 hours after FP2 finishes, which is in 24 minutes time. Again, not much has happened. We had all of our excitement yesterday. Had all the excitement yesterday with 5 red flags in qualifying. That's the most ever, I think, in history. We had joint 4 red flags in Baku 20-something, and then Hungary 2016. We had 4 red flags in those sessions, and we had 5 yesterday. So I think all of the excitement and all of that energy has been used up already for the weekend. I like to think of it as excitement for Grand Prix comes in like pre-packaged jars, and once the jar is empty of excitement, that's it. It doesn't like fill back up. This is a really weird way of thinking about it, but like once that jar of excitement has been used up, it doesn't refill throughout the weekend. So if you spill the jar in free practice 1 and then it's empty, that's it. There's no more. That's how I like to think of it anyway. I know that's really weird. I know that's probably a really weird way to think about it, but yes, that's how I think about excitement in Formula One events. And you can tell it's I don't want to call it a dull session, but a subdued session. The fact that I'm talking about an analogy for excitement for a Grand Prix weekend. Is it raining? Is there any raining? No. It's not raining. It's perfectly dry, bone dry, and it's probably going to be dry tomorrow as well at the moment. I think Mercedes is doing some low fuel simulations. Absolutely, 100%. That is yes. George Russell has done 6 individual stints. 6 individual stints, 3 on the mediums and 3 on the softs, with an awful lot of small laps on these compounds. So they've probably fueled very, very little, the 2 Mercedes, so that they do 1 quick lap, come back into the pits, fill up, change of tires, and go back out again. So Mercedes will be doing a couple of low fuel runs, which is quite interesting. I personally don't see the point in doing low fuel quick lap runs in this FP2 session, because you want to be gathering data for the Grand Prix. You haven't done a Grand Prix distance in the dry. You want to know how the car's going to perform, which is exactly what Ferrari are doing with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. They're just currently lapping around. Well, they're in the pits, both of them at the moment. But when they came out in the session, they did an awful lot of long stints on the medium and on the soft tire, for Sainz on the soft and Leclerc on the mediums. And that's something that Mercedes haven't done, and somewhat Red Bull as well. There's just completely different run plans going on, and it's a bit confusing. What would be the go-to tire for the sprint? Mediums. The softs aren't going to last long enough, and the hards are going to be too slow. Because you want to gain positions really, really quickly in the sprint, and then you want to hold on to it from there. So you want to gain the positions quickly with the mediums and then hold on to them. So potentially we might see a couple of people on the softs and drive really, really quickly for the first couple of laps, but then they're going to really struggle towards the end of the race. So I would say a lot of people are going to run the mediums for this stint. Why is Norris and Bottas not out at the moment? So it is Norris that's in the pits. He's complained of a brake pedal issue, So his brake pedal was going long, or it was feeling bizarre as he was coming into the final sector. So they're just currently checking over that at the moment. Not too sure why he's 4.3 seconds off the pace and 8/10 down on Schumacher. Not quite sure where that's come from. But then Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, the two drivers that haven't yet set a time with just 20 minutes left to go, their cars are in complete pieces. So they've got the engine out, they've got the gearbox out, and their cars are being rebuilt. And they're not going to have any time to run in this practice 2 session. And hopefully they'll be rebuilt in time for the sprint race, which is in 3 hours' time once this practice 2 session finishes. What has happened to Ferrari? Ferrari is just running race runs. It's as simple as that. Lots of fuel, high fuel race runs for Ferrari at the time being. So there's no need to run really quick lap times like the Mercedes and the Red Bulls are doing. They're just gathering some race data. Let's have a look, seeing if there's any more questions around Ferrari and Haas are just chilling. They are. Ferrari and Haas are just chilling. I mean, Haas might be struggling potentially a little bit down in 16th and 17th because this is it's a much warmer circuit now than it was yesterday when we had the vague dry running in qualifying. So it's completely different tracks conditions. So potentially Haas might just be a little bit on the struggle bus, but that's a small little inference. Nothing too much to go on from that. When will Mercedes bring an upgrade? Today, now. Well, yesterday they brought an upgrade kit for Imola. There is a Race 4 update kit on the Mercedes at the moment. So they've brought some new air directional side intake, I don't know what they call them, but little fins that direct the air from the side of the car down into the small little side pod entrance that they have. They've also changed up the rear section of the floor. So just in front of the rear tire, so on the trailing edge of the rear floor, and then also a wee bit on the diffuser, and quite a significant change to the rear wing as well. And this isn't just a race specific rear wing, like where we go to low downforce tracks where we chop out a huge section of it. It is a new designed rear wing that they've brought. So yes, Mercedes have brought updates to this race 4 at Imola. Yeah, the downwash thingies. They're I don't think they're called downwash thingies, but they are thingies that direct the air into the side pod, essentially, or lack thereof. Mercedes are still sandbagging. Imagine that. Imagine if they actually say they thought, right, we've made people believe that we're just off the pace. We've made people believe that we're really struggling. The drivers are unhappy. Toto Wolff is mad. And by race 4 or race 5, we're just going to wipe everyone's face and win the next like 20 races that are left in the season. That would be that would actually be typical Mercedes, to be honest, but I don't think that's going to happen. It would be quite funny, but I don't think it's going to happen. Is Mercedes still facing the porpoising? Yes, the Mercedes is still bouncing, as is the Ferrari. But the main problem with the Mercedes bouncing that they have is if you watch two side-by-side onboards, the Mercedes will bounce very similarly to the Ferrari on the straights. But when they get to the corners and corner entry and corner exit, the Mercedes continues to bounce. And that is the issue that they have. The drivers don't have the confidence in the car to turn in, which is why it understeers a lot on corner entry and then oversteers a bit on corner exit. They don't have the confidence in the car or the faith and the belief that the car is going to stick through the corners. And when you watch the Ferrari, it will bounce up and down exactly like the Mercedes on the straights. But the moment they start slowing down, the car is planted and the car is firm. And that's exactly what you want going into fast corners. So that's where a lot of the speed is being lost between the two teams. So yes, they're still suffering with the bouncing issue. Pretty much every team is suffering with the bouncing issue. It's just how they handle it when they get to corners. Please look at the time Mercedes set. 121 yesterday, Max set a 118. So yesterday is it's a bit of a odd session to look at yesterday because the track conditions were drying from the rain that it had. So the track was really cool, not really rubbered in at all. So if we do look at the qualifying, the fastest time dry time was a 118.7, and we're currently at a 119.4 as of today. And then Mercedes' fastest dry time came from Russell, a 1 minute 20.7. So there is a significant dry difference between Red Bull and Mercedes, but yesterday isn't too good of a comparison. You can't really compare it too much because it was a drying track. It wasn't rubbered in at all. And then it was getting wet again. So it's not the best of conditions to take a look at. As we've got Hamilton complaining about his tires overheating on the rear, but I don't believe him. If you've been watching the sport for literally longer than a couple of races, you never believe Hamilton when he complains about his tires. You just don't. As Leclerc has gone P2 and Sainz is now P6. So there's a wee bit more of the pace shown from the Ferraris there at the moment. So they did an awful lot of long runs for the first half an hour or so of this practice session. They were then in the pits for a little while, and now they've shown a wee bit more of their pace. But we've got George Russell leading the way, a 1 minute 19.4 in the Mercedes on the softs. Then we've got Leclerc almost 3/10 down on that. Then Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. They are all on the soft. So the top 5 are on the soft compound of tyre, and that is the lap, or that is the tyre they've set their fastest lap on. We then get Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen very close together, very, very close together. There's just 6 thousandths between them, and they're 9/10 off of George Russell, but they are on the medium compound of tyre. We then get Yuki Tsunoda, Guan Yu Zhao, and then Alex Albon. That is your top 10. We then get Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen in P12. Then Sebastian Vettel, Esteban Ocon, Nicholas Latifi, Lance Stroll, and Lando Norris. Now, Lando Norris is facing some pedal issues with his car at the moment. He's currently in the garage as he was complaining that the pedal was feeling strange and going long into the final sector. And then we've got Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, who have actually yet to set a lap time. This is because their car is in complete bits, with the engine and the gearbox out of the car, having some mechanical issues. But hopefully that will all be fixed by the time we get to the sprint race in 3 hours and 12 minutes time. And that was a little rundown there of all of the action that so far happened in practice 2, which isn't a great deal. Not much has really happened. What is happening to Esteban Ocon? Not too much. He's had extremely limited running. Has Esteban Ocon in this session and across this weekend in general. So I think it's just him more getting a sighter for the circuit and getting his confidence built up in time for the sprint race. Let's have a look through some of these comments. Where are we up to at the moment? Why is Mercedes so fast? I personally think they're on a lot of low fuel runs at the minute, because looking at how many stints they've done, 6 for George Russell and 5 for Lewis Hamilton, they've done an awful lot of small stints compared to everybody else like the Ferraris and the Red Bulls, who have done a couple of longer stints. So I would say Mercedes are on more low fuel runs compared to the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. Mercedes looks like they're improving. It could also be track conditions, because the track is now completely different to what it was yesterday. We have a much higher track temperature. We have a much higher ambient temperature. There's no moisture in the track at all. It's not damp. It's not getting more wet. So it's completely different. It's almost a race data gathering session this weekend. As Perez goes P2, or was Perez always P2? I can't remember now. But he's on the medium compound of tyre, is Sergio Perez. Ferrari's DRS is off. We've got some people saying, oh, I have to take a look at that. I'll have to pay a bit more attention to the onboards as we're currently having a replay of George Russell bouncing up and down. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, that's painful. But I did see a good tweet yesterday saying that how's George Russell managed to go from getting into Q3 in a Williams last year to struggling to get into Q3 in a Mercedes this year. It seems like one of the most George Russell things to actually do, to go from a solid Williams car to now an underperforming Mercedes car. It's quite interesting. Red Bull's DRS is also off, but Mercedes is on. Yes, but we saw that Mercedes was running their DRS with George Russell there. But I will have to take a look to see about the Red Bull and the Ferraris as well, to see what they've got. As we've got Leclerc set in a purple sector 1, a 25 flat. That's 3/10 up on Sergio Perez. Then 27.9 in sector 2, and then a 26.8 in sector 3. So Leclerc doesn't improve, but he stays in P3, just under 3/10 off of George Russell's 119.1. Interestingly, we are a bit slower. We're a bit slower than we were yesterday. An 18.7 was the fastest lap time set in the dry qualifying session of yesterday, and we're currently at a 19.4 this morning. But again, this morning, we're not really set up for fast single lap pace because there's no need to do any fast single lap pace running in this practice session, because there are no further sessions that need fast single lap pace. What do you think about Aston Martin? I would say at the minute they're just a bit confused. I'd say like an awful lot of teams, they're confused with the setup of the car, and they don't quite understand the full philosophy of what they've designed, if that makes sense. So it's difficult to understand a problem that is difficult to replicate in CFD, in the wind tunnel. And it's just hard. If you're already on the back foot, it's difficult to try new things, to understand what is wrong with the car. It's a similar position to what Mercedes are in currently. It's just difficult to understand how to make changes and then make the correct changes. Why has Ricciardo not set a time? So Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas are both suffering from mechanical problems. The engine and the gearboxes are out of the cars for both drivers at the moment, and it is looking unlikely with 7.5 minutes left that they will actually both set a lap time. But hopefully they've got just over 3 hours until the start of the sprint race to be able to rectify that. So that is why Ricciardo and also Valtteri Bottas have not yet set a time. So hopefully that answers that question there for you, Ryan, about why Bottas and Ricciardo hasn't come out just yet. So this practice, I assume they're all trying different things and testing. Basically, yeah, it's exactly that. There is absolutely no need whatsoever in this session to drive flat out and set a really, really quick single lap, because there's no need to do that. You just want to gather as much race data as you can on the medium tire, which is probably the one that most drivers are going to use, and just prepare as much as you can for the sprint and the race, which is why they've done a lot of long stints, unlike Mercedes, who have chosen to do a couple of shorter ones at the moment, which is why they're a little bit higher up the leaderboard than we would expect, because their run plan has looked completely different to everybody else's, which is why they're still in the pits and everybody else is out on track. How many laps is the sprint race? The sprint race is going to be 21 laps for this weekend, and there have been some small revisions to the sprint race for this week, or for this year in general, as opposed to what it was last year. So it's still going to be around 30% of the overall distance, so around 20 to 25 laps, lasting for about 30-ish minutes. Overall, but they've changed how many points are going to be awarded. Last year it was 3, 2, 1 for first, second, and third, whereas now it's going to be 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 from first down to 8th. They've also changed up a couple of the wordings and the phrasings for all of this. So the pole position award, the official pole position for the Imola Grand Prix, is for the fastest driver yesterday, not for the winner of the sprint. And that's basically it. What has happened to Bottas's car? I have just gone over that just a little moment ago, but Ricciardo and Bottas are both in the pits. They have had mechanical issues with the engine and their gearboxes. They're just having to go over with the car to get it fixed and repaired. So both drivers have not yet set a time, and it is looking unlikely that with the remaining 4 minutes, 45 seconds, that they will actually get out and set a lap time. So what is the difference between the sprint race and the actual race? I'm sorry, I'm new to F1. Well, welcome to the world of Formula One. I hope you are enjoying it. It is a bit of a hectic and a manic world to join into, but the sprint race is new for the past couple of years. So it was new last year and also for this year as well. It is a different qualifying format. So the sprint race is about 30% distance. It's going to be 21 laps later this afternoon, and it's going to be essentially a short race to set the grid for the Sunday's Grand Prix. Now, we had our traditional Q1, 2, and 3 qualifying format on Friday to set the grid for the sprint race. Now, there's also still lots of discussion going on about whether we should actually have the qualifying for the sprint, or whether we should do something based on the championship position to set the grid for the sprint race. But hopefully that's explained it there for you. Has the sprint race ended? Nope, the sprint race hasn't even begun. The sprint race will begin in 3 hours' time after this practice session finishes. And then is it going to rain in the sprint race? No, it is not. There is no rain scheduled for this weekend at all, or at least for today. I'm not 100% sure on tomorrow, but today, no, there is no rain forecast. So the sprint race will be happening at 16:30 local Italian time. And Leclerc did almost spin, yes, coming into that's about the most action that we've had so far in FP2. He just had a wee bit of an oversteer moment going through one of the final chicanes. And that was about it. There really hasn't been anything that's happened at all in this session. Today is raining. No, today is not raining. Today is not raining at all. I've just joined in. Why is Mercedes high up when they qualified so low? Now, that's interesting because Mercedes have sort of done a completely different run plan to everybody else. They've done an awful lot of short mini stints where they've had an awful lot of low fuel as Carlos Sainz cuts a corner just there, cuts one of the chicanes completely. But Mercedes have done an awful lot of shorter stints, low fuel stints compared to everybody else, especially Ferrari and Red Bull, who have done a lot of long stints on the medium compounds. So there is a big run plan difference. So I'd imagine yesterday is more representative of what we're going to see from Mercedes rather than today. Is there a lot of graining on the softs? Yes, it does look like that. It usually looks like that for a lot of the races. The soft tire just sort of disintegrates and rubs to pieces essentially, but you can usually battle through the graining phase and it gets a bit better. It just takes a couple of laps, and those laps during the graining phase aren't very comfortable because when the tires start graining, you just lose all the confidence in the car and you end up losing a lot of time. But if you can battle through the graining, then you end up finding more time and more life in the tires at the moment. Norris is on an outlap. Where is Lando Norris at the moment? Yes, he is currently out on track at the moment. They have hopefully fixed his brake pedal issue, and hopefully he's got a wee bit more confidence, a wee bit more confidence in the car at the moment than he did a little while ago, as he didn't really seem too happy that his brake pedal was feeling very bizarre. Is Imola a good track for overtaking? I'm not sure. Did we see that many overtakes last year in Imola? Again, it was a rainy race last year in Imola, though. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You'd have to check back on you'll have to check back on the last year's race to see if there's any decent overtaking spots. I can't quite remember. Do you think Hamilton and Mercedes will get a podium? No, 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 no. I don't think so because they're starting. Where are they starting? So they're starting the sprint race 11th and 13th. If they can make up a couple of places, uh, maybe, but there's just going to be so much riffraff in between them and the podium places. They will need a lot of stuff to happen in front of them. I don't think they're faster than any of the cars that are in front of them, essentially. I've got the checkered flag being waved on my Sky stream at the moment, as that brings an end to practice 2, but our stream still has a minute 24 left on the lap count. That is interesting. Well, we'll just wait for that one to count down just a little bit, and I shall answer a couple more questions as we've had the checkered flag wave on the Sky stream here, as FP2 for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix has come to an end. P1 and P4 is excellent by Mercedes. Yes, yeah, easily. They can take this. They were P1 and P4, regardless of the circumstances. We don't know their stint plans, their fuel loads, engine modes, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, P1 and P4 is going to be a nice confidence boost and a morale boost for the team. So for those people wondering, we do now have a 3-hour break until the sprint race, which is happening at 16:30 Italian local time. Is this channel going to be streaming the sprint race too? Yes, it is, but I will not be commentating. That will be Ryan. He will take over for the sprint race at the moment when that happens in 3 hours' time. Let's see, are there any more questions? As we've got 10 seconds left on our countdown timer, and then I'll just give a little brief rundown of the leaderboard and how things stand at the end of this FP2 session. Why is Haas not improving? That's a very good question. They're currently 12th and 13th, but I think there's a lot for them to gain. They're going to have a decent sprint with Magnussen starting in P4, and then hopefully they can move forward in the race tomorrow. But that has brought an end to this FP2 session here at Imola ahead of the sprint race, which will be starting in 3 hours' time. I'll just give a brief rundown of the leaderboard. We've got George Russell topping it in the Mercedes, a 1 minute 19.4, setting a fastest lap on the soft compound of tyre. Followed by 800ths by Sergio Perez, a 119.5 on the medium tyre. Then we've got Charles Leclerc in P3, Lewis Hamilton in the other Mercedes in P4. They are the only 4 drivers to set a sub 1 minute 20 lap time. We've got Fernando Alonso P5, then Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, and Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, and Guan Yu Zhao are the top 10. Then we've got Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen, and Mick Schumacher, the 2 Haas. Then we've got the 2 Aston Martins with Stroll ahead of Vettel, Esteban Ocon in P16 after having a bit of a difficult session for Esteban Ocon down in P16. Then Nicholas Latifi in the Williams, P17. Lando Norris only completing 6 laps in the McLaren down in P18, having a lot of brake pedal issues. And then we've got Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, who failed to set a lap time due to mechanical issues with the engine and the gearbox for both cars. There we go. That is a roundup and a commentary for the Emilia Romagna FP2 session here. Join us again in 3 hours' time for the sprint. I hope you have enjoyed, and I shall see you all very, very soon.